This is On the Trail of the Fat Man. Let me get back to the beginning here. All right, this is another installment in the adventures of the Calculator Kid. Last Thursday, about an hour before gym class, I was sitting in my office, which doubles as the boys' bathroom on the second floor C hall just down from the teacher's lounge, on a stool I had borrowed from the janitor's closet, reading the school paper, when my secretary, Miss Marmot, buzzed in on line one. Yeah, I know, we only got one line, and it's just two cans strung together with a piece of twine, but you get the idea. Got someone out here to see you, boss, came her muffled voice through the line. At least I think that's what she said. The tin can on my end was pretty beat up. Send him in, I yelled through the door. This better be good, I thought, stuffing my hands into my pockets and tipping back on my three-legged stool. Two other kids had been in already this morning, but they weren't looking for me to solve a case for them. They just had to use the bathroom. One of those kids was Joey Pork and Beans Fatoni, who ate a can of pork and beans every day for lunch, and I had to air out my office for about an hour after he left. The door swung open, and Timmy Two-Tone walked in. I didn't know what his real last name was, but everyone called him Timmy Two-Tone because he always wore two tones of the same color, the lighter tone on the shirt and a darker tone on the trousers. Today he was wearing a caramel-colored button-down shirt and dark chocolate dungarees. The top three buttons of his shirt were undone, and his skinny, chalk-white chest caught the glare of the overhead fluorescents pretty good. Timmy Two-Tone was a kindergartner, and I wondered how he got all the way up to C Hall without being spotted by a teacher. What can I do for you, kitty? I asked, popping a stick of chewing gum into my mouth and stuffing my hands back into my pockets. Who you calling kitty, you two-bit flea-bitten excuse for a security guard? Timmy had a New York accent so thick you could have cut it with a knife. And speaking of knives, as small as Timmy was, you usually felt like you needed some sort of protection when he was around. Take it easy, I said, Timmy, flashing a big, friendly grin. I tipped my stool forward so my feet were flat on the ground and pulled my hands out of my pockets slowly so he could see I wasn't packing any heat. The last thing I needed was for Timmy Two-Tone to think I was going to pull a water pistol or something on him. I was just having a little fun with you, that's all. Say, you got a pretty big attitude for a kindergartner. I ain't no crummy kindergartner, scowled Timmy. I'm in first grade this year. I should be in the same class as you, but I got held back a couple times. Couple times already? You're ahead of the curve there, buddy boy. I leaned back on my stool again and looked at Timmy Two-Tone up and down, slowly. This kid's got a screw loose, I thought. It seemed like a good idea not to get him too worked up, at least just not yet. Better put on the kid gloves for this one. What is it you said I could do for you again? I asked, real friendly-like. I didn't say. All right, what do you say we start there? How can I be of service to you? I checked my watch. I didn't want to be late for gym class. Coach had told me yesterday if I was late again, I was going to have to run an extra 3 laps. And with all the candy bars I'd been putting down lately, that was not something I was looking forward to having to do. You in a hurry or something? Asked Timmy Two-Tone sarcastically. This guy was beginning to get on my nerves. Lay it out for me, Timmy. I ain't got all day. Sometimes the client needs a little shove in the right direction. All right, if that's how it's going to be, then here it is, said Timmy Two-Tone. I need you to find someone for me. So that's what it was, a missing persons case. Not a bad line if you can get enough information up front. The main problem with this type of case, though, is that the person being looked for usually has a good reason for not wanting to be found. You missing someone? I asked. Have you checked the playground? I would pay special attention to the loose dirt under the swing set. Very funny, said Timmy, not laughing. Very humorous. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a real comedian here. Listen, if you can't do it, just say so. I'm sure we can find someone else to locate our missing person for us. What do you mean by our missing person? I asked, feeling a little uneasy all of a sudden. I mean, me and the boys, that's all, he said with a smirk. So Timmy Two-Tone was already mixed up with the boys. He couldn't mean anyone else but Tony Cannoli and the riffraff he hung around with, like Anthony Spumoni, Stefano Abruzzi, and Joey Fatoni. Joey Fatoni had done more than just stink up the joint this morning. He'd probably been sent in by Tony Cannoli ahead of Timmy to check me out and make sure I was legit. I didn't like the setup, not one bit. Listen, Timmy, I said, tipping my chair back again and picking up my newspaper. Why don't you run along and tell the boys I ain't interested in working for your little club? It doesn't exactly give me a thrill thinking about getting involved with you bunch of junior mobsters. Oh, we're mobsters, are we? Asked Timmy. Is that what you think about me and my pals? See you in the funny pages, I said, hoping he would get the message and scram. I directed my full attention to my paper, pretending to be engrossed in a story about the upcoming school chess championships, but I could feel Timmy Two-Tone standing there staring holes through my paper. After a moment, Timmy broke the silence. I bet you like your fancy office here, he said. Your fancy stool and your fancy little school paper. You like all that, I bet, don't you? What, this dump? I asked, looking around at the boys' room. Not a chance, boyo. What kind of hole was Timmy Two-Tone living in that he thought a three-legged stool propped up in the corner of the little boys' room was fancy? But as I looked around at the graffiti on the stall doors and the dirty sinks with their foggy mirrors hanging above them, their empty soap dispensers attached precariously to the wall nearby, and the overflowing trash can by the door, I couldn't help but feel a little sentimental about the place. It was my own little nook, my own little corner of the school, and truth be told, as filthy as it was, I did sort of have a soft spot for the place. I guess Timmy Two-Tone read my face as I looked around. Yeah, he said, that's what I thought. You like your fancy digs. Well, listen, pretty boy, if you want to keep all this, you better rethink this missing persons case for us. Or what? I asked. Or you'll be using the broom closet in E-Hall for an office. And there ain't much light in there to read a fancy newspaper by. Trust me, I know all about it. I was curious to know how Timmy Two-Tone knew about the lighting situation in the janitor's closet, but decided not to open that particular can of worms. You got until tomorrow at lunch to get back to us, Timmy Two-Tone said, and left the room, leaving the door open behind him. As he left, I saw Melissa Marmot through the doorway, quickly trying to conceal her end of the tin can telephone. What were you up to? A little eavesdropping? I asked, pointing at the can Melissa Marmot was clumsily concealing behind her back as I wandered out of my office. Timmy Two-Tone had already disappeared down C Hall. Oh, that, said Melissa Marmot, turning a little red. Yeah, I did accidentally overhear some of what you and Timmy were talking about, but not much. This line is not exactly clear, you know. It's sort of like making a transatlantic call from a payphone on a busy street corner in Manhattan or something. My thoughts exactly. But all the same, Melissa Marmot had overheard some, if not all, of my conversation with Timmy Two-Tone. Well, kiddo, what do you think? Should I take Timmy Two-Tone's case? Well, gee, I don't like the idea of you getting mixed up with Tony Cannoli and his cronies. Listen, sweetheart, if I let every junior mobster in this school intimidate me, I'd never get any work done. Still, you ought to be careful. Tony Cannoli is a fourth grader, and he's easily twice your size. And besides, I saw his buddy Stefan Abruzzi scale the pegboard in the gym in no time flat. He's as big as a sixth grader. I cut her off with a wave of my hand. The bigger they are, the harder they fall, I said. And the harder they punch, added Melissa Marmot, handing me her end of the tin can telephone. But suit yourself, it's your funeral. I've got to get to language arts class. We're supposed to be learning about irregular plurals, and I want to ask a question about the difference between persons and people. That one just doesn't make any sense to me. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I made a mental note to look it up later. You never know when something's going to be important down the line. You run along to class, I said as she stomped off down the hall. I'll watch the fort here for a bit more and then head over to gym class a little early. I don't want to have to run those extra 3 laps today. Not that some extra exercise would kill you, she joked over her shoulder, patting her stomach in jest, and then disappeared around the corner to B Hall. That's the end of part 1. It's 3 parts, so.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
I want to know what's going to happen, so hopefully we'll have time for the next 2. You said there's 2 more?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed we get to
Okay.
reach the exciting conclusion.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. So let's see. Faith, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah. I can go next. So I will be singing Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell. My favorite musical artist, Sarah Bareilles, just yesterday released a duet with Josh Groban with this song. And so I kind of listened to it on repeat yesterday. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this song too. this is the first song I've ever performed with a differently tuned ukulele. So that's interesting. It's tuned 1 fret more than it would be. So fun little fact about this performance. Hope you enjoy. Foes and foes and angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feathered canyons everywhere. I looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in the way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way, but now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed, and something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know how at all. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, I love Joni Mitchell. She's like, yeah,
So talented.
when I discovered Blue in high school, I think I just listened to that on forever repeat. It's just like was so inspirational and yeah, just dove into the rest of her repertoire. Yeah.
Did you all hear that her first recordings, her oldest recordings were just discovered and released? So like all her like super early stuff is, and the very first song she recorded is a really beautiful version of the House of the Rising Sun, right? Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, I only listened to that one.
Like radio demos or something. Like she recorded them like for a Canadian radio station or something, I think. Yeah, it's awesome that those have surfaced.
Yeah, really cool. I've only listened to House of the Rising Sun, but yeah, I want to listen to the rest of them. I'm assuming she's okay with them being released. I imagine she would be. But yeah, it's cool that they got found in like somebody's basement, or I think the DJ. Um, yeah, amazing. She was like 18 or something at the time. Thank you, Faith, for sharing that. I have a feeling. Oh, good. Okay. I think my internet connection is unfortunately not great tonight, so I apologize for all the pausing and weird bleep bloops that you might be hearing from me. um, Sophia, are you ready to share?
Yeah, just I'm under my bed, so I just had to make sure I wasn't gonna like slam my guitar against the top here. Yeah, so I'm gonna be doing Heads Roll Off by Frightened Rabbit. I just like hadn't done it because like I'd played it for a couple months and I was like, oh, I'm assuming I've played it somewhere at some point, but I guess I haven't, so hence. Alright. Jesus is just a Spanish boy's name. How come one man got so much fame? And to any me, it's pointless to anybody that doesn't have faith. Give me the cloth and I'll wipe my face. When it's all gone, something carries on. It's not morbid at all. Just when nature's had enough of you, when my blood stops. So when my head rolls off, someone else's will turn. While I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to earth. So you can burn me, 'cause we'll all be the same way. Dirt in someone's eyes, right down the drain. I believe in a house in the clouds. God's got his dead friends found. He's painted all is red to remind them they're all dead. And you know when it's all gone, something carries on. And it's not morbid at all. Just when nature's had enough of you, when my blood stops, someone else's will not. When my head rolls off, someone else's will turn. You can mark my words, I'll make changes to earth. While I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to earth. Tiny changes to earth. Tiny changes to earth. Tiny changes to earth. Tiny changes to earth.
Thank you, Sophia.
I hope like I was strumming kind of like loudly and rhythmically, so I'm hoping it wasn't like too weird with the audio. I tried to mess with my audio settings a little bit, so hopefully it kind of helped. I don't know.
Yeah, it was pretty. I think it was pretty even. I don't know how it worked for all y'all. you're on everybody else's end, but yeah, I like the strumming pattern is different too. It seemed than somewhat. No, yeah, yeah, okay. I don't know that song. I like it. You always share this what's new to me music and expanding my horizons. So thank you. Faith. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. Heads roll off. Okay. Frightened rabbit. Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't know frightened rabbit. Welcome, Deanna. Are you sharing tonight or just enjoying the shares? Enjoying, yes, yes. Beautiful. Well, thanks for being here. And Jane, also welcome.
Jane is Sophia's grandma.
Oh, awesome.
Scott's mom.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're here as well. Do you want to share, sir?
Yeah, I can share. Yeah.
Okay. Joe has something. I will let him, I'll get out of the way and let him do his thing. It's going to say Christina, but it's really Joe. Here we go. Oops, sorry, just a second.
You can turn that. Just turn that.
Oh, just turn.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I had to make the print a little bit bigger because, these days, trying to look at this screen, looking at the screen far too much, really. This is just something that I wrote. It's pretty short, and I kind of, I get to see my folks back in Brooklyn, New York, once a year. If we're lucky, twice a year. And, just trying to relate it to now and how it's not all that different for me in terms of seeing my family. And it's been about a year. It'll be a year in December. And so I just kind of got to thinking about that and thinking about everyone's situation. And we all have to communicate this way and be in our own little kind of isolated chambers. And so I went out to my little shed and was just kind of digging through some old kind of stuff, organizing. How you get to organizing and you get to the second piece of paper and you spend like 3 hours shuffling around maybe 4 pieces of paper. And I came across this, and I just wanted to share this with you all. As is the case almost every summer, I visit my parents in Brooklyn and page through the family photo albums, stacks of them. I pull them out of the bookshelves one by one, wiping off at least a year's worth of dust, preparing to revisit ghosts from my past, to admire the beauty of youth, to reflect on the consequence of time. It brings a distinct melancholy that has no cure, fading only with the passage of time, as recycled memories tend to do, their lines becoming less clean, less sharp each year. Who's that? Who has children now? Whose children have children? Who got married? Who's divorced? Who's struggling with addiction? Who's died since last year? Do I really want to know? But I can't look away from them. The familiar faces smiling at me from the photos were also smiling decades ago into a lens at some birthday party or wedding day. A few were drunk, most were sober, but all knew what to do when the camera was angled and tilted their way. I'm reminded of the promise, the boundlessness of life that is tamed by an inescapable past. And while the present eats away at the future, I think about who I am compared to that carefree child on the glossy paper with a smile that could have conquered the world, though I know too well I never did. Yeah, I've had my moments when it all felt right. Don't we all? Moments when the sun shone in the perfect harmony with the radiant innocence of childhood. I see my dad, a splitting image of me, and me of him, staring coolly off in the distance with a playful smile sending shivers up and down my neck. Behind his white hair and hearing loss, I see the same smile, that same little boy, buried under layers of rough skin and hard work. There is that boy who moved forward despite all that was tempting him to look back. Unlike me, he never did. In my mom's expression, I see a calm courage and determination. I see no choice but to forge a life, regardless of its unyielding demands. I see the qualities that were bestowed to her for children, but with slightly softer edges. As I'm looking back to these frozen moments, yet again, the pictures accessible yet unchangeable, I think of what could have been. But there's no way to know. Not from these pictures, not in the new day before us. There's only what is. That's it.
I clap from the side. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing.
absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Ah, I'm sure some of you can relate to that, especially those of you who have family that's far away, and you know that whole looking through photo albums.
Every year.
All right, so we can go back around. Round two. I know Chris had some more part two and maybe part three, if we can get to that too, of the calculator kid story. Just so I know, Faith and Sophia, did either of you know no more for Faith? No. Sophia, no more for you too, or no? Okay. I might offer you something, but I might not too. I was like, if there's not enough time, or if there's enough time, maybe I will. I broke out my violin for a little Scottish fiddle tune. But I want to hear some more Calculator Kid. I think there's time. Mine it's super short. It's like 2 minutes. So, let's get back into some storytelling.
All right. All right. So, part two. I snooped around a little at lunch, but no one was talking about a missing person. It occurred to me that if someone from the school really was missing, they'd be talking about it in the front office. So I managed to get myself sent to the principal's office in 6th period for a little back talk, but the secretaries were all stone-faced and mum on the topic, and all I managed to get for my trouble was detention. The next day at lunch, I settled my tray down at the 4th graders table next to Joey Fatoni. "How's the pork and beans today?" I asked casually. "A little light on the pork," he answered through a mouthful of pintos. "Something I can do for you, pal?" he added, setting down his milk carton and giving me the once-over. "Sure there is," I answered calmly, keeping my eyes on my tray. "You can stop stinking up the boys' room in C Hall for starters." Joey Fatoni shoved his tray to the side and pushed his folding chair backwards with a screech and began to stand. But before he could get to his feet, I stopped him with a pat on the arm. "Hey, Joey, I'm just having a little fun with you," I said cheerily. "Sit down, finish your lunch. When you're done, you can introduce me to Tony Cannoli." Joey scooted his chair back and pulled his tray towards himself with a scowl. "Nobody meets Tony Cannoli unless Tony Cannoli says so," he grunted. "Try telling that to the PTA," I said, not laughing. "Listen, Joey, maybe you didn't get the memo, but Tony Cannoli definitely wants to meet me. Today. Right now, as a matter of fact." Still scowling, Joey looked me up and down again. I smiled and nodded affirmatively to let him know I was on the level, and he scraped his chair back again and stood up. Come with me, he said sullenly. We'll see if Tony wants to meet you or not. He led me out of the cafeteria and over to the study hall. Stefan Abruzzi, looking like a miniature weightlifter in a tight-fitting houndstooth sports coat, was standing a guard outside the door. Go on in, he's expecting you, Stefan said to me. Joey Fatoni looked surprised at first, and then his expression changed to irritation when Stefan indicated that he should wait outside with him. I stepped inside and saw Tony Cannoli, Anthony Spumoni, and Timmy Two-Tone eating lunch at a couple of desks they had shoved together in the center of the room. Timmy Two-Tone, outfitted in an aqua shirt and dark blue trousers, smirked at me triumphantly from behind his carton of chocolate milk. Tony Cannoli and Anthony Spumoni were wearing matching open-collared Hawaiian shirts and white pants. Pull up a chair, said Tony Cannoli in a hoarse whisper as he wiped the corners of his mouth with his paper napkin. He indicated a nearby desk with a wave of his hand. I walked over and slumped down into the chair with one arm hanging over the back of the seat. Anthony Spumoni sprang to his feet. He grabbed me by the lapels and sat me up straight in my chair. Didn't your mother teach you any respect? He seethed, his face an inch from mine. Well, she certainly taught me not to speak with my mouth full, I retorted, pulling my handkerchief from my pocket and wiping my face. Anthony Spumoni raised his hand in the air, but Tony Cannoli stopped him with a cough before he could bring his fist down into my face. Boys, whispered Tony Cannoli authoritatively, waving us apart. What's going on here? Let's eat our lunch like civilized human beings. We're not Neanderthals, are we? Anthony Spumoni and Timmy Two-Tone looked at Tony blankly, apparently at a loss for the meaning of Neanderthal. He's talking about cavemen, you goons, I said, or haven't you gotten to that in your science class yet? Tony Cannoli chuckled as his henchmen took their seats again. Very good, he said to me appreciatively. It's always a pleasure to be in the company of someone with a working intellect. Listen, I have heard you have quite a fondness for candy bars. Would you like me to send one of the boys down the hall to the vending machine, or Tony Cannoli trailed off, his face the very picture of the perfect host. No, thanks, I answered. The school has been on a health kick lately. All they have down there is granola bars. I'll stop by the convenience store on my way home and pick up some Baby Ruths. Say, how'd you know I like candy bars? You must really do your homework. Actually, I pay some of the more intelligent kids in class to do my homework for me, Tony Cannoli answered, smiling. Anthony Spumoni and Timmy Two-Tone got a big kick out of that. That's what makes me such a good businessman, which brings me to the reason I asked to see you today. Here we go, I thought. This ought to be good. You already know I want you to find someone for me, started Tony in his patented hoarse whisper, but I wanted to make this very clear. What I'm about to ask you to do doesn't go beyond the confines of this room. Is that clear? Sure, clear as day, I said. But do you want to get to the point? I don't want to be late for fourth period. Tony Cannoli leveled a dull stare at me. He was all business now, and I could see he didn't appreciate the quips. When he'd seen I got the message, he continued. I want you to find someone for me, he said, but this has to stay very hush-hush. If it gets out, it could ruin my reputation with some of the other kids at the school, and I can't have that. Am I making myself understood? No, I get you loud and clear, I answered, leaning closer. Good, whispered Tony Cannoli. The person I'm looking for is Santa Claus. I hadn't seen that one coming. It took me a minute to realize he was serious. You mean Santa Claus? As in big red suit, lots of toys, reindeer and a sleigh Santa Claus? I asked after a moment. Is that who you're talking about? Exactly, said Tony Cannoli. That's exactly who I'm referring to. Is that going to be a problem for you? Well, gee, I wouldn't even know where to start, I answered. Understandable, said Tony. I appreciate your honesty. Let me tell you why I'm even asking you to do this for me. You see, much of what our parents tells us doesn't make any sense to me, especially where holidays are concerned. We have bunnies, leprechauns, elves, and all sorts of nutty things flung at us all year round. I mean, the Easter bunny? Who in their right mind would ever believe that's real? A bunny that dyes eggs and then hops around hiding them in people's yards? Give me a break. Even some of the stuff that I know is true doesn't make sense. Take the Pilgrims, for example. They had a nice meal with some Indians, once as a friendly gesture, and now we cram all the turkey and stuffing we can get down our necks every Thanksgiving? It seems a little extreme. And how is a little piece of candy with the words "Be Mine" written on it supposed to make me feel a deeper connection to my loved ones on Valentine's Day? This was all starting to sound a little crazy to me. I checked my watch again. Look, continued Tony Cannoli in a sympathetic tone, I know it sounds screwy, but of all the things we've been told, Santa Claus actually makes a little sense. He flies around the world and delivers gifts to kids. That's nice. I like it. I'm sure he probably has a whole team of delivery guys doing most of the work for him, but I can relate to the fact that he wants to take all the credit. It's his idea after all, right? It's his operation. Sure, I said, but I wasn't. I was beginning to think Tony Cannoli was having a laugh at my expense. I was getting a little steamed. So you want me to find Santa Claus for you so you can thank him for all the nice presents he's left in your stocking and under the tree for you over the years? Is that it? No, that's not it at all, said Tony. I want you to find him for me so I can get in on a piece of the action. I looked at him blankly, and then at Anthony Spumoni and Timmy Two-Tone. They all looked dead serious. Listen, continued Tony in a deadpan voice, an operation like that, you gotta have advertising, you gotta have stockholders, you gotta have a lot of capital to keep something like that running smoothly. I wanna find Santa Claus and see if I can shake him down a little, get a little something extra for me and the boys here. You wanna shake down Santa Claus? I asked, flabbergasted. And I suppose you just happen to have something really good on him, some juicy tidbit that he wouldn't want to let out to the general public at large, is that it? Sure I do, said Tony Cannoli confidently. I happen to know that he delivers presents to kiddies, whether they've been naughty or nice. I happen to know that very intimately, as a matter of fact. And I don't think he'd want that to let that get out. At least, I don't think most parents would want that to get out. I was dumbfounded. Tony Cannoli had just told me he wanted to find Santa Claus for him so he could get in on a piece of the action. Whether Santa Claus even existed or not was still up for debate in my mind, but the idea of shaking him down was beyond me. So, do you think you can help me out? Asked Tony. I should just mention that I get very upset when people tell me no. Once again, I got the message. My fee is 35 cents a day plus expenses, I sighed. Tony Cannoli snapped his fingers, and Anthony Spumoni dropped some crumpled dollar bills and a couple of grimy coins on the desk in front of me. That's an advance for 3 weeks. Whatever you don't use of that can go towards expenses. It's going to be very nice working with you, my friend, Tony said, flashing me a big grin. I pocketed the money and stood up to leave. I'd appreciate daily updates on the case, started Tony, but I cut him off. If you want me to work on the case for you, you're going to have to let me do it my way, I said firmly. That means when I find out something, I report it to you and not beforehand. And I don't need these hooligans stinking up my office in the meantime. Is that clear? Tony Cannoli regarded me calmly for a moment and then nodded. You take your time, he whispered. When you get it all figured out, you let me know. Just try to get some answers before December. I want to have plenty of time to get in on the action for this year. Capiche? I turned and pushed the door open, slamming it inadvertently into Joey Fatoni, who had his ear pressed against it, apparently listening to the whole conversation. I jostled past him and Stefan Abruzzi and headed across campus for my next class. I arrived moments after the bell rang and got chewed out by the teacher, Mrs. Einbrow, but fortunately, I didn't get another detention. That's the end of part 2.
Nice. So, should we wait until January for the final installment? What do you think?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking everybody. You want to hear some fiddling? I see some fiddling happening over there. Oh, Faith wants to hear it tonight. How much longer is it, Chris?
Each part is about the same length, so however long that took me is probably how long the next part is. What would that take, 5 minutes or something?
Okay. Both? Is that what you're saying? Both. So we should hear the rest of this though, right? Like since we got it. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Final installment.
All right. Is my mic on? Yeah. Okay. For the next few days, I steered clear of my office. I didn't want to run into any of Tony Cannoli's gang unexpectedly, and I needed some time to think. I asked Miss Marmot to bring me my messages at lunch, which she did, but she wasn't too happy about it. I told you not to get mixed up with that crowd, she said daily, handing me my crumpled messages. They were mostly notes from the office Miss Marmot had intercepted before they got mailed to my house, inquiring when I would be back from my extended family vacation in Puerto Rico. You'd better steer clear of the office for a while, she said one day. I think one of the secretaries thought she spotted you at your locker the other day. They're starting to get wise that your family didn't really go out of town for a month. I decided to stay off campus completely for a few days and spent my afternoons at the local public library instead, doing a little research. One of the librarians there, a Mrs. Brockthorne, according to her name tag, was very helpful, although at first she seemed to think I was there for the afternoon story time. I'm glad you could make it, she said cheerfully after I trudged up the granite steps and entered the brass and glass revolving doors. Our reading of The Very Hungry Caterpillar will begin shortly. Gee, that sounds swell, I said brusquely, but I'm in a bit of a rush. Where can I find some books on the history of Santa Claus? Oh my, we don't start reading those until after Thanksgiving, she exclaimed. You're a bit early for that this year. I don't really have time for this, I thought. Thanks anyway, lady, I said absently as I headed past her towards the reference section, but she stopped me with a motherly hand on my shoulder. Listen, if you really want Christmas books, I can show you where we keep them. I'm a little worried you're going to miss the story time, though. It starts in 5 minutes. I'll do my best to hurry, I assured her with a tense smile, thinking it would be easier to just let her think that's what I was there for. She led me to an aisle that had dozens of oversized picture books with glossy images of Santa and his reindeer on the covers. Say, these look like fun, I said, flipping distractedly through a couple of titles. But I'm really more interested in the history of old Saint Nick and his band of merry elves. Oh, well, that isn't as exciting as these books here, but if you'll follow me. Mrs. Brockthorne led me to the reference section and handed me a thick book called Father Christmas and the Legend of the Holiday. There were a few other books on the shelf with similar titles that I grabbed before settling down at a nearby table to peruse the text. Mrs. Brockthorne mentioned something else about missing story time, but I was already absorbed in my reading, and after a moment or two, she wandered off, wringing her hands and saying something about how kids just don't seem to appreciate a good story time anymore. I spent the rest of the afternoon at the library, as well as the next week or so, reading everything I could about the legend of Santa Claus. When I felt I had all the information I could handle, I went over to the desk where Mrs. Brockthorne sat. Thanks for your help. You're a real Class A dame, I said, handing her a crumpled bill. Go ahead and keep that, I added as she looked at the money. I may need some more information over the next few days. Frowning, she reached over and put the bill into a metal box labeled Overdue Reference Materials, and I made my way back out the revolving door and down the steps to the street. I headed back over to the school where I found Miss Marmot and asked her to tell the office I was back in town. I needed to do a little more research at the office, but first I had to go and see an old friend. I found Juicy Fruit in the locker room, changing back into his street clothes after gym class. He was alone in the room, sitting on a bench and nothing but a towel. Say, how's Trix? I asked as I entered the room. When I saw he was just sitting there in his towel, I added, what gives? Someone changed the lock on my locker while I was in the shower, he said glumly. I can't get to my clothes. What do you know about Tony Cannoli and his gang? I asked, stooping down to take a look at his locker. This looks like a standard pin and tumbler lock, right? Geez, I don't know, said Juicy Fruit. I never saw it before now. The one I had on there before had a neat little picture of Donald Duck on it. You put the key into his beak to open it. I pulled a paper clip from my pocket and straightened it out flat, and then made a little loop in one end. Tony Cannoli, I said, holding up my improvised lockpick for him to see. And you get your clothes free of charge. No one has to know you were stuck in nothing but your towel. He's into a lot of stuff, said Juicy Fruit. What do you want to know? I want anything you can give me on him or his crew, I said, working on the lock. And you better get talking. You're going to end up wearing nothing but your towel on the bus ride home. I don't think you want to live that down for the next 15 years, do you? Give me a break, pal, he said. But when I made like I was going to pull the paperclip back out of the lock, he started talking. When he was done spilling the beans about Tony Cannoli, I gave the makeshift pick one last turn, and his lock popped open with a click. You might want to keep that somewhere handy, I said, tossing the paperclip onto the bench next to him, and consider getting a combination lock. Most of the kids around here don't know how to pick them so easily. Juicy Fruit was delirious with gratitude, and I left him to get dressed in peace. I headed over to the office and told the secretary there that I was the new editor of the yearbook committee, and she let me into the reference room, where I spent some time looking up back issues of the student yearbook. I took a few notes and made a couple of photocopies, and then I went to find Tony Cannoli. "How's the pork and beans treating you these days?" I asked when I saw Joey Fatoni at his locker. "The boss has been looking for you," said Joey. "He said I should tell you to go see him straight away if I ran into you." "Lead the way," I said brightly as Joey slammed his locker shut and locked it with his key. I grinned and he led the way sullenly back to the resource room of the library. "Catching up on a little reading?" I asked when I rounded the corner and saw Tony Cannoli and his henchmen sitting at a long table in the corner. They were all dressed in matching dark sports coats and white pants, with the exception of Timmy Two-Tone, who was wearing a light mauve shirt and purple trousers. "Come, come, Sid, whispered Tony hoarsely as he waved me over. "It's good to see you again. I was a little worried you weren't going to come through for me, especially when the boys told me you had headed to Puerto Rico with your family." "I got your information," I said, and was promptly hushed by the librarian with a shh and a stern glare. "Good, good," whispered Tony. "By the way, these librarians here, they're very strict." "Yeah, I sort of figured that out," I whispered back. "Look, here's the way it stands. Santa Claus exists, but I can't tell you where to find him. That's tough luck for you, I guess." "I think it might turn out to be tough luck for you," said Tony Cannoli, losing his smile. "I gave you very specific instructions." "Yeah, I remember," I interrupted. "You wanted to shake down Santa Claus for all he's worth. You don't exactly forget something like that too easily." "So you say he does exist," whispered Tony Cannoli. "Let's start there. How did you find this out, if I may ask?" "There's been more written about this guy than the Pope," I answered, and tossed him a manila envelope with photocopied pages inside. "You can read about it for yourself in there. And believe me, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there to read. According to my research, Santa Claus lives anywhere from the North Pole all the way to Spain, depending on the time of the year, and travels via reindeer, white horse, and cargo ship. He also travels with a variety of companions, ranging from elves to real people, and some of them sound pretty tough. A little tougher than these goons here." I looked around at Anthony Spumoni, Stefan Abruzzi, and Joey Fatoni, and Timmy Two-Tone, who weren't looking too happy right about that then. "But how do you know he's real?" persisted Tony Cannoli. "Oh, I never said he was real," I answered point blank. "I just said he exists." The group of gangsters stared at me blankly. "Look," I said in a softer whisper, "as long as kiddies believe in Santa Claus, he will continue to exist for them in stories and legends. If parents want to tell their kids about him, he'll be there year after year until the kids grow out of the stories. Whenever that is should be up to them, though, not up to you with your screwball shakedown scheme and your tacky clothes." Stefan Abruzzi and Joey Fatoni jumped to their feet. "Sure," I said, "go ahead, slap me around a little if it makes you feel better. But I did a little extra research and found out it's very uncouth to wear white pants in any month with an R in it. That pretty much eliminates the entire school year." "Are you going to let him talk to you like that, boss?" asked Timmy Two-Tone, also rising to his feet. "Cool down, Timmy," I said. "I got a little bit of information that you might be interested in, too." Timmy Two-Tone shot me a nervous glance, and I continued. "Sure, it's all in there," I said, pointing to the manila envelope. "I found out your real last name is Swinson, and you're not even Italian. By the way, your yearbook picture is very flattering." Timmy Two-Tone licked his lips and looked at Tony Cannoli. "I don't know what he's talking about," he said weakly, suddenly losing his thick accent. "Also, I know about you hassling Juicy Fruit. I saw his Donald Duck lock on Joey Fatoni's locker just now, out in the hallway. You wouldn't want that tidbit to leak to the guidance counselor or the principal, would you?" "It's all conjecture, hearsay," answered Tony Cannoli, grim-faced. "It's too thin. It wouldn't even hold up in detention hall." "Maybe not, but this probably would," I retorted, tossing a miniature cassette tape onto the table. "I took the liberty of recording our lunchtime conversation a few weeks back. You'll especially like the part where you talk about hiring other kids to do your homework for you. And don't worry about getting it back to me. That's a copy. You can keep it for your files." I stood up to leave. "Anything else I could do for you boys?" I asked big-heartedly. Tony Cannoli and the others sat there, looking at their hands for a moment, and then Tony Cannoli looked up at me. "This isn't over, pipsqueak," he hissed. "I'm sure it's not," I said, and then repeated it in a whisper before the librarian could shush me again. "I'm sure it's not. It's been great doing business with you. I'll send you a bill for my expenses." I left the library and headed over to C Hall, where I found Melissa Marmot outside my office. "How'd it go?" she asked nervously. I don't think we'll be hearing from that bunch of junior mobsters anytime soon, I answered with a smile. And I don't think you'll be taking any missing persons cases anytime soon, she retorted. Hey, that's swell, I said. You got your question answered about the difference between persons and people. I looked that up for you while I was at the library, but I see you don't need the information anymore. Yeah, my language arts teacher straightened it all out for me. You should try going to class occasionally. It's very educational. I'll take that under advisement, I said. In the meantime, how about I buy you a chocolate milk before next period? I think we have a few minutes. Melissa Marmot removed her hall monitor sash and stuffed it into her pocket. I thought you'd never ask, she answered. Cafeteria or vending machine? Whatever you like, kiddo, I answered. You know, teased Miss Marmot as we headed down C Hall in the direction of the cafeteria, I kind of missed you while you were in Puerto Rico. Honey, I said, I think I just got back into town. The end.
Oh, I'm so glad we got to hear the rest of that story. That was great.
Sorry, that took a little longer than I thought it would, but sorry about that.
Okay. I think we were all entertained, so no worries. And very apropos for this season, so, you know. I think maybe had it come in January, maybe we would have been a little like, all right, we're over it now, let's move on. But right now we're like, yeah, putting up Christmas decorations, all into it. So thank you. All right, you still want to hear a little bit of Scottish fiddling? All right. So this is from a collection that I found at the library, actually. I'm always looking to supplement my music that I'm sharing with my students. And I don't have the book with me, so I can't remember the name of the collection. But basically they're compiled some musicologists, or I don't know what, compiled some Scottish folk tunes, fiddle tunes, but then also a lot of them were from bagpipes. So some of them really sound very bagpipey. This one sounds a little more fiddly to me, but it's just an interesting to hear a bagpipe kind of a tune on the fiddle. But anywho, this one, I will put it in the chat. I love the title of this one, is Neil Gow's Lament for His Second Wife. Not his first wife, his second wife. Anyway, I don't know. It's funny. Okay. Enough chit-chat. Oh, I think I'm not going to pin my video. Let's just do this. Okay. I'm not sure how Charlie's going to feel about this. He looks a little skeptical. He's giving me some side eye. Okay. There it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I don't usually play in front of people, so so you're lucky. My students, of course, but not so much the general public. But there you go. Oh, you know that tune. Oh, cool. Nice. Well, I think that this is bringing us to the end of our evening. I just want to, let's see if this works. I'll put this in the chat. If you are inclined to donate, you are welcome to do so. We always appreciate when y'all can. Not a huge deal, but it's always nice to have that support as well to keep these going. I personally love seeing all of you every month, and I love the new people joining us as well. So thank you for joining if this is your first time. And we'll be back again in January, the third Saturday of January. I can't quite remember what that is off the top of my head right now, and I didn't write it down. But you know, you'll get messages to remind you. And until then, join us for Carols for a Cause if you can on the 19th of December. And if you're into some vocal experimentation led by the wonderful Audrey Voon, please join us on December 2nd for that. Oh, this little boy. Are you doing that? And I think that is it. Winter term, like I said, is going to begin again in January for our classes. And thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for watching, and have a great holiday. Stay safe. Be well. Hugs to you all. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.